that's just what people do. The theory is you always find somebody new. I guess there was a time I believe that was true, but now...
Well, guys, I knew this day was gonna come. I knew that one day I was gonna have to do this video and this explanation, and I knew that it was gonna suck. And why do I think it's gonna suck? Because this one strikes deep into the people I love. This is one of those videos that I have to do reluctantly because people I really care for, people who mean a lot to me, have been misled, have been taken down the wrong path. And I think, I just, look, it pains me to do this, but it's got to be done. It's got to be done. You need to understand this. And I know that this is just going to be hard for you, and it's going to hurt a little. It's going to hurt. You're going to feel a little sore for the next couple of days. You know, you're not going to be able to sit down because you're going to be a little butthurt. I'm sorry, it's true, and I don't mean to insult you. I'm not insulting you. I'm just saying that what you are going to learn today is going to dig into a lot of what you've always believed. You see, we have always been taught a lot of things because our education system was built by progressives. It was built by people who wanted to indoctrinate us with progressive beliefs and ideals. And some of the core fundamental beliefs that you have were born out of progressivism and out of that desire to keep the people tied to a belief that they need you to believe in. And that affected all of us. I was affected too. Most of my life, I believed a lot of the same things you believe in. And it really does hurt me. It really does make me sad to find out what the truth was. And you know, okay, so let's move on. Let's get into this. First, I want to tell you, I'm still fighting this cold. Still, it is just living in me. I know a lot of you know this, some don't, but I have basically been fighting colon cancer for about 6 years now. And it was stage 4. It was very deadly, but I've gotten past that for the most part. But I have a very weak immune system, so anything that passes by, I catch. So that's why it's hard for me to fight this. It's a struggle, but it's not your struggle, it's mine. So don't worry about that. So before we get into this, in the interest of semantics, there's some terms that you need to understand, and you need to understand them clearly, and they're not the ones you're used to hearing in the way that you're used to hearing. So when I'm talking about conservatism in our society, I'm not talking about social conservatism. I'm talking about political conservatism. What political conservatism is the idea that you want to conserve what our founders created, that you want to go back to and preserve the Constitution as it was constructed, as it was written, and as it was intended. That's political conservatism. Now, social conservatism has a lot more to do with, intersocial interaction. It's the way you and your friends, the things you believe. You have you're religious, that's social. If you're talking about abortion, that's social. For the most part, although our founders did actually talk about abortion. Yes, they did. It's in there, and the left is not going to like that, but I'm going to do that on another day. Back to my point. So I am talking about political conservatism as opposed to progressivism. Progressivism is the idea that the government needs to be more active in your life and in the way you do things, in your daily activities, right? So conservatism is absolute minimal government. The intention of the Constitution was to absolutely limit them to the very smallest necessities regarding the way the states interact with each other. And progressivism is the consolidation of government on behalf of the people. So those are the differences. Now, getting into the difference between a nation and a country and a union. We are a union. We are not a nation. We are a confederacy. I know you're, we were a confederacy, but then they got rid of the Articles of Confederation. No, we have always been a confederacy. That's exactly what kind of system we have. We're a confederacy. And what that means is we are now 50 nation states, right? 50 nation states. And we have formed a union to where the state bodies work with one another in the big things, the things that, it takes a federal government to do. But other than that, we are intended to be both voluntarily and effectively a nation state for each state. So Florida is its own nation. Florida is its own country. Florida is its own sovereign body with its own government that governs the people. And as long as it's voluntarily a part of the Constitution, then it is going to govern the people with the agreements made to be part of the Constitution. So there's a lot more to that. I can get into that, but I think I might bore you. The point is, the Constitution was supposed to be limited. So if you call yourself a conservative, then everything you believe that government should do ended when the Republicans were created. Whoa, what? But Republicans are the small government? No. The Republican Party was founded in despotism. The Republican Party was founded in a tyrannical, a nationalist foundation. They wanted to destroy the Republic as a confederacy and unite them as a national government. As Madison put it, the difference between a confederacy and a nation as it pertains to government is that in a nation, the government acts on the people and the daily lives of the people, the federal government, the national government. And in a confederacy, the federal government acts on the governments of the states. We were supposed to be a confederacy. That ended when Lincoln decided that it was worth killing 600,000 people to put everybody under one big, powerful government. So you can argue with me on that, and we'll do that on another day too. I think that's something we definitely should cover, because that is probably blowing your mind. That is probably pissing you off right now, right? I'm sure you're like, this is crap. Republicans are the best. No, Republicans were not founded in any kind of honor and integrity. They were the progressive party of the 1860s. So that, I know, that's not what we're here for. We're here to talk about immigration. And this is really, if you think that messed with your head, wait till we get to this one, right? So, our founders, let me go here. Is there any argument that the primary writers of the Constitution were Thomas Jefferson and James Madison? Is there any argument? Do I hear any arguments? I don't, right? And Hamilton, you could say Hamilton, but Hamilton opposed the Constitution throughout. He was always the anti-Constitution guy. He had a different perspective. He didn't think that we should be a confederacy. So he wasn't necessarily, he put a lot into it, but he wasn't in support of it. He was kind of trying to break it apart. The two guys who were most responsible for the Constitution were Jefferson and Madison. That's fair, right? And if you're a gun guy, if you are reaching back into time to show the modern gun grabbers why they shouldn't be grabbing your guns, then you are going to people like Jefferson and Madison and a few others. But all of those people agreed on two things. The first being that the federal government has no control over guns. They have no legitimate authority to ban or regulate or register or require any sort of background checks or any of that. They were clear that all of that is not constitutional. So if you are a believer in the Second Amendment, if you actually do use their logic to support your Second Amendment beliefs, you're correct. You are. But you can't, with any consistency of intellect, do that while simultaneously supporting federal immigration laws. Hang on. Sorry, my dog is a sweet, loving, protective dog. If anybody gets within 100 yards of the house, he lets me know. So anyway, here's your problem, and this is where you're going to get butthurt today. The people who wrote the Constitution, who wanted so desperately to make sure that all people had the right to bear arms, all free people, people who had not been, adjudicated, who had not gone to court and been stripped of those rights, without due process, that all guns are on the table for all people until people have deserved otherwise, until they've been, gone to court and been proven, or at least by their jury of peers, been decided to be unsafe, right? So that, it's not a question. That's not, whoever's making up all this nonsense crap, it's not true. The fact is, our founders were absolutely adamant that the only way that the government could have anything to do with anybody's guns whatsoever is if a jury of peers said that, okay, this guy's a problem. He needs to not be armed. So that's what that was. Okay, so flip over to immigration. Let's go back in time. Let's go back to common law. Let's go back to the 1600s and the early to mid 1700s. The British believed in something called right of way, right? Right of way means that all humans have a freedom to travel, to move about, to go from one place to another. And if you get into some of the writings, I could go deeper into that. But again, I don't want to bore you. If you want me to, I'll do one. I will do a complete soup to nuts on this. I'll do it. But this one's going to be long enough as it is. But, so they believed that there was a difference between private property and public access. Public access became, under empires, a matter of subjects to a law. Yeah, they're cutting their grass, dog, get over it. Neighbors cutting their grass, which is why we're inside today. So they believe that, if you were a subject, then you could be restrained. But otherwise, people just had a general right. So, and they had to do that because if private property were the rule, then people could just buy up enough private property to block off open land, thus claiming the open land. You know what I'm saying? So if 10 or 15 people bought strips of land around 100,000 acres, they could block off that land. And if they blocked off that land, then that 100,000 acres was theirs. Even though they hadn't purchased it, even though they had no title or claim to it, it became theirs. Yeah, they weren't stupid. They knew how to play those games. So, government, one of the reasons we have government is to keep those things from happening. So that is one of their duties, is to protect right of way, right? To protect the free travel of people. And remember, if you're religious, then you know that God gave the earth to the people, to all people. I don't think you believe that God has chosen certain people who, own the earth, and that all others have to ask for permission. I don't think you believe that. But you might believe that when it comes to the United States. You might say, well, that's the United States' territory, and that anybody else in the world only has permission to pass through and about if those who are lucky enough to be born here say yes. So, by birth, we have an inalienable right, I guess, God's right to own the land and prevent other people from sharing it. That's what you apparently believe. And that's what we've all been taught to believe. It's not true. It's not the design. It's never been the design. The purpose was for, private property. The government's job is to protect private property while simultaneously protecting right of way, giving everybody the right to pass through. Not giving them, protecting their natural right to pass through. So the government never intended, our Constitution never intended, for the federal government to have any control whatsoever over national borders. Because A, we're not a nation. We're 50 nations. B, there's no such thing as a federal border. The federal government is a body of elected representatives who sits in D.C. They are not a place. The federal government's not a place. The United States are not a place, right? Well, the U.S. is a sovereign. No, the U.S. are, not is. The U.S. is not an is. It is an are. The U.S., the United States, are places, each with their own laws, each with their own immigration law. Now, as part of the union, the argument came, well, if we're going to join this union, we should be able to have people passing freely from one to another and be able to move in and out, and everybody who is a citizen should have the privileges and benefits of citizenship throughout all of the states. So that was agreed, which became a question of naturalization. If you were naturally born within one of the states, then you were naturally born with all of the privileges of citizenship in all of the states. Now, there's a difference between rights and privileges. There's a big difference. All of the rights that are protected by the Constitution are written the people. See, if you read the Constitution and all the writings of the founders, there are two different words that are used, and they're used intentively. They mean you have people, which is anything that is human, and you have citizens, and anyone who is has been citizenized, naturalized, or is natural to the area. So they're two different things. All of your rights in that Constitution are for people, all people, any people, because the Constitution doesn't create rights. The Constitution limits the government, prevents the government from intruding on rights. And because the rights belong to all people, the Constitution prevents the government from taking those rights from all people. See? Well, yeah, but we can't, if they come in, they're not from here, so they don't get rights. No, they do. They always have rights. The problem is, where they are, they don't have anybody to protect their rights. But once they come into one of the states who have ratified the Constitution, they do. They have somebody who protects their rights, or they're supposed to. Of course, all that changed with the Civil War. But prior to the Civil War, there was a perfect case study in where we are today. You see, the problem today, the reason people care about immigration is not, it's not all this security nonsense. It's not. You're an idiot if you think it's a security question, because be honest with yourself. There are greater threats legally here than anything that's ever going to cross the border. The Democratic Party is a greater threat than anyone in the world in terms of violence. So don't pretend it's about security. You're just using that to try and convince the other side to go along with you. It's not about drugs. It's not. I mean, let's be honest. If you want to stop drug use, make drug use illegal. Don't make drug sales illegal. Make drug use illegal. That's easy. There you go. Then anytime somebody gets caught doing it, they go to jail. But anybody's allowed to have it. See, if I'm carrying... Oh, that's a different story. We'll go down that road another day, too. The point is, it's not about drugs. It's not about security. It's about votes. And you know it. You know that's the problem. And you're saying, yeah, you're right, it is. Because if the people from Mexico come in here and vote Democratic, then we lose all of our freedoms. That's what you're saying, right? Well, that's not a good enough reason. Not at a federal level. That's not a good enough reason to say, you know what, I'm afraid, I'm scared that people are going to vote against me and against what I perceive as my freedoms, so I'm not going to let them vote. That's not how this is supposed to work. I mean, the idea is not to prevent people from having ideas and prevent people from having beliefs. It's to educate them and to teach them the correct beliefs and to show them why they're wrong. You're not going to show them why they're wrong by refusing to let them in. All you're going to do is motivate them to be wronger. You see what I'm saying? You're creating opposition by being an opposition. So if you just say, look, come on in, everybody come on in, come on in. And when you get here, you have to follow our laws against offenses to people. Because, I mean, immigration's illegal. It's not by the Constitution. The Constitution does not allow the federal government to control immigration whatsoever. You think I'm crazy, right? Because you've read laws, U.S. Code 3, whatever the hell it is. Well, that says it is. Well, okay, so we go back to this. There are also gun laws. So if you can say that, well, these new laws make it okay for the federal government to control immigration, then you can also say that any law passed to control guns is equally acceptable. See, that's what you are saying. So you have to make up your mind today. Can the government make any law it wants to, anytime it wants to, regardless of what the Constitution says? Or must it be held to the restrictions of the Constitution? You have to make that up in your mind right now. Because either you are a conservative, you believe that we should stick to the Constitution, or you are a progressive and you believe that the Constitution was more of a suggestion. It's 200 years old. It didn't possibly know what we were going to run into today, blah, blah, blah. All the same excuses that the left use. Because that's the leftists' excuses are what you are using to control immigration. You are using very leftist excuses. In fact, it was socialism that led to federal immigration law. Prior to socialism, the vast majority of these immigration laws were irrelevant. They didn't need to be there. It was the fact that the government started tightening in on the economy and started socializing and nationalizing the U.S. that led to a need for immigration law. If you get rid of socialism, you get rid of a need for immigration law. I mean, you do. There's no reason for it to be here. If we actually followed the Constitution, not only would it be illegal for federal immigration law to exist, but there'd be no need for it. But you don't believe me. And you still don't believe that our founders opposed federal immigration. So let's go back. Let's go back to 1798, I believe. Yeah, 1798. Let's go back to when French nationals were moving into the states in droves. And in the process, a lot of people got nervous that they were going to lose votes. The nationalists got scared that they were going to start losing votes and that the U.S. was going to be taken over politically, electorally, by illegal immigrants. That's really where they were in 1798. So much so that they passed laws that, well, one, made it illegal to speak out against the acting government, clearly unconstitutional, but even in 1798, our second president was on board with that. So they passed that law, totally different discussion, and they passed immigration law. Yeah, they said, well, because we don't want people from bad places to come over here into our country, my country, and vote us out and vote, for their benefit and not for me, and destroy everything that we'd worked for. We're going to give the executive authority over immigration to the president. And we're going to bypass states' rights and just make it a federal thing. Well, at that point, those two guys who you always refer to when you're protecting your guns said, no, that will not serve. That will not do. We are not going to, in fact, we're going to call our militia and we're going to tell you right now, if you, the federal government, come into our states, Kentucky and Virginia, and try and remove one individual, we will go to war with you. We will kill whoever we have to because you have no authority to do that. Still don't believe me? Let's read. We're going to read what our founders wrote. This first from Thomas Jefferson in 1798. You ready for this? Ready for this? Open your ears, son. Listen carefully and read along with me. Resolved that alien friends, which are defined by the Alien Act as natives, citizens, denizens, or subjects of a non-hostile nation or government, who shall be within the United States but not actually naturalized, are under the jurisdiction and protection of the laws of the state wherein they are. That seems pretty obvious, right? That seems, you understand what that means. Again, if there are aliens here in any state that are not naturalized, that are not citizens, that they are the state's duty, not the federal government. He says that pretty clearly. And then he goes on, that no power over them has been delegated to the United States, nor prohibited to the individual states, important thing to notice, distinct from their power over citizens. So that means that according to Thomas Jefferson, probably the biggest influencer on the Constitution, the federal government has no constitutional authority over aliens within the states, period. He continues, and it being true as a general principle, and one of the amendments to the Constitution having also declared that the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, which, immigration was not, nor prohibited to the states, are reserved to the states respectively, or to the people, which means at the local level. So, that said, the act of the Congress of the United States passed on that day of July in 1798, entitled An Act Concerning Aliens, which assumes powers over alien friends not dedicated or delegated by the Constitution, is not law, but is altogether void and of no force. Again, which assumes powers over alien friends not delegated by the Constitution, is not law, but is altogether void. Do I have to say it again? The federal government was not delegated the right over alien friends. Now, what does that mean? What's the difference between alien friends? Okay, if you are coming from a place where we are at war with you, then the federal government does get control. So now, what that means to you, if you think people shouldn't come over the Mexican border, and you think that they are, Mexico's a problem, declare war on Mexico. Go ahead, declare war on Mexico. Once you've done that, guess what? You get your federal border wall and you get your federal everything. You get all that control. But you have to declare war on Mexico first. See how that goes. It's not going to end well for anyone. You might think it will. It ain't going to go well. I personally think we should just annex Mexico. Make them one of the states. Why not? Well, make them, how many states are in Mexico? Like 4 or 5 states? I don't even know. I know. I've read their constitution. It's scary. But anyway. So I think that's pretty clear. But it's not clear enough because you still have doubts. Because you don't trust me. I don't know why. Because I never lied to you. I never lied to you. But you don't trust me. So let's move on, right? Resolved that the imprisonment of a person under the protection of laws of this Commonwealth on his failure to obey the simple order of the president to depart out of the United States, as is undertaken by the Alien Act, is contrary to the Constitution. Contrary to the Constitution. Because one amendment of the Constitution has provided that, quote, no person, not citizen, no person shall be deprived of liberty without due process of law. Do you understand that? Do you understand what that means? No individual, regardless of nationality or citizenship, shall be deprived of their liberty to move about the United States without due process of law. It's not ambiguous. It's not a question. It's not a maybe some person. No person might be, or perhaps no person. No, it is in absolute, clear, vivid detail. No person shall be deprived of liberty. I know, I'm sorry. It's painful, isn't it? It is painful. It was painful for me. It did. It hurt a lot. It took me weeks to swallow this pill because 5 years ago, absolutely was on your side. I wanted a border wall. I hated the whole illegal immigrants. They were taking our jobs. No, I was wrong. I was so wrong, and it hurt so bad to find that out. But at least I'm man enough to say, hey, I was wrong. I was absolutely wrong. Now I'm not wrong. Now I have empirical evidence, empirical proof that our framers had a whole different idea of what immigration was supposed to look like. Now, that's not to say that the states can't do it. The states have certain laws, but the states also cannot stop people from passing through. All they can do is decide who resides within the states. Residency and citizenship are two completely different animals, which has been covered by our founders. All the arguments we have today, all of them, every one of them pretty much, except for AR-15, but effectively that same argument was made. It was made when they were talking about the quality of guns back then. They wanted us to have the best quality guns, but that's a different video. I'm always talking about different videos, right? I'm probably boring that way. So anyway, I think I could go on to read the rest of this, but I'm looking at a lot here. There's all of it is about you not being able to say who comes and goes within the United States. And that was all. Did I say that was from Jefferson? I'm sorry, that was all from Madison. Nope, that was Jefferson. Okay, I'm getting a little confused. It's because I'm so busy talking to you, I'm not paying attention to what I'm doing. So now, let's talk about Madison. What did Madison think? Because we know now that Thomas Jefferson was opposed to federalized immigration. It's not questionable at this point. There's no argument, none. So don't even try. I mean, you can try. I would love for you to try, because I would love to take you to the mat for that. Because I had to do it to myself. I had to take myself to the mat. So let's go to Madison. Let's talk about Madison. The General Assembly doth also express its deep regret that a spirit has in sundry instances been manifested by the federal government to enlarge its powers by forced constructions on the constitutional charter which defines them. You see what that says? So the federal government, and he's regretting, he, as in, James Madison and the state of Virginia, regretted that the federal government decided to use the charter that actually limits and defines and creates it to gain power. He's like, that's regretful. I didn't think that was going to happen. When I wrote the Constitution, I thought the government would understand that they were supposed to be limited. But this Alien Act, this intrusion on states' rights, is regretful, that it should not be happening. The government is using its own restrictions against me. That's not fair. You're not supposed to do that. And the purpose of that was, quote, to transform the present Republican system of the United States into an absolute, or at best mixed, monarchy. You see, the federal government was using its powers to transform itself from a federal Republican system into an absolute or mixed monarchy. That was his concern, because of aliens, because the federal government was trying to take aliens out of his state. So, can it be any more clear? If it can't, it will now. Okay, more. I have more, and I have so much I could drown you with it, but I'm not going to. I'm going to give you one more thing. All right, so he goes on to say, this is Madison again, James Madison. The guy who, again, the second biggest guy in the Constitution, that the General Assembly doth particularly protest against the palpable and alarming infractions of the Constitution in the two cases of the Alien Act and the Sedition Acts. Passed in Congress. The first of which, the Alien Act, uniting a legislative and judicial power to those of an executive. It subverts the general principles of free government. So creating federal immigration law and putting it in the hands of the executive branch subverts, you understand what that means? Subverts the general principles of free government. So where's your argument? That's going to be an interesting one. I can't wait to hear your arguments on this. As well as the particular organization and positive provisions of the federal Constitution. So they're actually without any compunction and without any doubt being completely clear that the federal government just does not hold that authority. And it gets into exactly why it doesn't. But the two guys who wrote the Constitution, the two guys who you lean on to keep you armed, also don't want you, the federal government, or anyone else at that level controlling immigration. That's it. There is no such thing as an illegal immigrant at a federal level. Now, again, we can go to the state control, we can go to state powers, and we can talk about who can and cannot move into state authority, state areas, you know. So like if somebody wants to move to Florida from Mexico and they want to live in Florida, they got to talk to Florida first. That doesn't mean they have to apply for citizenship if Florida is okay with it. At one point, I believe it was Jefferson, Jefferson actually said that, you know, the state of Kentucky does allow immigrants to move there, untethered. Any immigrants could move to Kentucky at the time because, you know, they were trying to expand the population. And the idea that the federal government was going to come in and take those people away was absurd to him. He was, again, ready to go to war. Our founders were ready to go to war to stop these things from happening. So, look, I think I've rambled on long enough. I think you get the point. I think I've hit you with absolutely uncompromising proof that if you are a conservative, you cannot believe in federal immigration. You are either a conservative or you support federal immigration law. You support ICE. You support, the border wall. All these things that the new progressive Republicans are pushing on us. You're one or the other. You can't be both. Sorry, that's just factual information. It's not coming from me. It's coming from our framers. It's coming from the guys who wrote the Constitution. Look, man, I know I just chased away a lot of my favorite people. I'm sorry. I am. I'm sorry to bring this to you. It hurts me as much as it hurts you, as Dad used to say as he was beating me. No, I'm sorry. I really am. I want you to still follow me. I want you to still, I'm going to do a lot of things you're going to like too, right? Because I am not a leftist. I will tear down the left all day, every day. But I will tear down progressivism everywhere it hides. And it is hiding in the Republican Party as well as the Democratic Party. And I'm going after progressivism everywhere I find it. So hey, thanks a lot, guys. Thank you so much for being part of my channel. I couldn't do this without you. I could, but I don't. I love you. I want you, my people. So hey, thanks a lot, guys. Take care. See ya.
You heard a while, but that's just what people do. The theory is you always find somebody new. I guess there was a time I believe that was true, but now